What is up, all of my ghouls, all of my ghosts, all of my good friends? This is the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. I'm Joe Frick. That is Drew Hannah sipping on some tea. Drew, it's week 9, baby. How we doing?
Bro, I was crazy sick last night and I fought through, but this residual cough I have is brutal. I was hacking up a lung through like that whole video. You're gonna have to get that mute button ready.
This
It's
is
brutal.
back-to-back weeks now for you. What's going on, man?
When I get the fall sick, like it happens every year, my cough will just linger for months. This thing's gonna be on the show for probably till the spring. It's brutal. I don't get it.
Popping up on the injury report every Wednesday, but he's still here. He's still getting it done. If you're in the show watching live, welcome. Get your comments in the chat. So whether you're on Twitch, YouTube, I guess X, whatever, get those in there. Drew's going to get started with some injury updates, and then we'll start answering some questions. So Dr. Drew, throw on the lab coat. What do you got for us today?
Halloween, huh?
Oh, yeah, baby. Come on. You know the vibes. I love Halloween. And he's got the jacket. He's got it. I was like, I'm surprised that you're not wearing nothing, but incredible.
I was actually I have that Assassin's Creed costume I wear every year that I've had for the past 15 years.
Yeah.
But shout out to Thomas Jefferson University, Sidney Kimmel Medical Center, where I did my undergraduate research. I haven't worn this coat in a while, but
still fits though.
It's a little tight, honestly.
Oh man, dad life's got him.
Anyways, it's actually a short injury list.
We love that.
We can kind of fly through this. Jordan Love suffered a groin injury. It's too early to tell if we think he's going to play. Something to monitor throughout the week. I think that he'll play. It's a big matchup that they have this week, right? Divisional game against the Lions.
Yeah, against the Lions at home. That's going to be a great game if he plays.
Yeah, man. So I think he plays. It's too big of a game not to, unless he really hurt, which, he could be, but we'll see. Something to follow. If not, Malik Willis, he kind of has been okay when he's came in.
Yeah, he's done well. He's done way better than he did at Tennessee. Granted, they only threw the ball, I think, 12 times that first time that he played, but still good.
Yeah, I mean, the pass catchers aren't really benefiting, but he's kind of been like a guy that you can plug in as a QB too, because he's running and stuff. So, something to think about. Maybe a fishbowl guy. Stephon Diggs suffered a torn ACL. I mean, you knew as soon as it happened.
Non-contact, always bad news.
Yeah, when I go through my notes on Monday morning, I kind of speculate on my own what I think it is until they, come out and announce it. Typically the morning of the show, I can go back and kind of get all the details right away. I put ACL. It was a no-brainer. Yeah. He's up there in age, so we'll see how he looks next year, but I kind of think that this might be done for him as terms of fantasy output, because you know how I am. I'm not like a guy that's going to rely on someone that suffered an ACL the year after. He could be 2 years away, and at this point where he's at in his career, this could be it for him, but hopefully not. We'll see how things go. He's a free agent at the end of the year too, so we'll let the money talk about what we could think about him from a fantasy perspective moving forward.
I mean, just looking even just like at the season-ending injuries, you look at the receiving room of Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin, now Stephon Diggs. I mean, that's a formidable trio right there.
Yeah, and with Nico being out yet, I think he'll probably be back in a couple weeks. Tank Dell's a guy that you should definitely fire up this week. I went after John Mechie pretty hard in waivers. Another guy you could probably consider as a flex.
So you're thinking Mechie over Hutchinson? Because I know that he's slotted in primarily as like the X receiver for them. But
I just felt like from the eye test that Mechie looked like he was warranting a waiver ad. And I actually feel like I'd be comfortable with starting him. The only thing that's kind of stinks is that they're on the Thursday night game. And it's always like uncomfortable starting guys on Thursday night. It's just like the vibes just aren't there. So we'll see. I mean, he might be a guy that you look for later on. Maybe not a this week move. The Jets have been struggling against the pass though. So if you're in deep leagues, he's definitely someone I feel comfortable firing up. Just it's going to depend on what your roster is looking like.
Makes sense. Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting what happens, not only from like a fantasy perspective, but also with Houston. Like you went in, like they have this really good young QB. They've gone and bolstered the room so that they have like really contender status, and the injuries have just piled up for that offense. Okay.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. And CJ Stroud already wasn't running, so he's really hurting from a fantasy perspective. So he's a guy I probably wouldn't be playing right now, honestly.
Yeah.
He hasn't been putting up enough to put him in your lineup.
Yeah, and I think too, without the rushing production, it was going to take a big year from him in the touchdown department in order to be fantasy relevant. He's obviously losing weapons, so I don't see how you could reasonably start him until you get at least a couple of those other weapons back. Like
Right.
until you get Nico back, like there's no way.
Right.
And even still, I'm not sure about it, which is funny because he's been playing good football, just not good fantasy football.
Right. Yeah. Anyways, we have a trio of wide receivers then from Jacksonville. Brian Thomas Jr. suffered a chest injury. It seems like that's kind of minor, actually, and I think that he's going to play. Doug Peterson said it's more of a pain management thing. So we'll see, but I think that he's going to play. But obviously something to monitor. He's probably going to be a game time decision. Christian Kirk, we talked about this a couple weeks ago with Jordan Mason. You go down on that shoulder, it's one of two things: AC joint sprain or you broke your collarbone.
Yep.
Unfortunately for Christian Kirk, he broke his collarbone.
Yep.
So he's done for the season. I think that his contract might be up too, right? Or
I think he still has a year or two left.
I knew he had like no money
somebody that they were contemplating trading. I know that he was talked about as like a very potential trade target. So he has a potential out at the end of this year. So you could cut him, be about 22 million in dead cap, but he's still technically under contract through 2025. And then he's got a couple of void years for 2026.
Yeah, I was getting the vibes that he wasn't part of Jacksonville's plans, obviously with the trade rumors. But
well, especially now they traded their starting left tackle to Minnesota as well. So you can see that they're in a selling mode. I like that move, but if you're going to trade that, then it's like, all right, what are you doing with those other pieces? I do think they would have moved Kirk if he would have been able to stay healthy, but obviously that's off the table now.
Absolutely. And then Gabe Davis suffered a shoulder injury, but that sounded more like it was a stinger type of thing. So he's probably going to play. So if Brian Thomas Jr. misses, Christian Kirk obviously isn't going to be in. Gabe Davis is probably a guy you could fire up, but you know how he is. He's either going to get you 3 touchdowns or he's going to get you nothing. So it's tough. Parker Washington's obviously a guy that you could look at too, because when those guys went down, he played 100% of the snaps the rest of the way. So I added him in a few leagues. I don't feel comfortable enough to start him. I think that it's going to be a lot of Evan Ingram. Travis Etienne sounds like he'll also be back this week. So probably Ingram, a lot of Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. And then the last 2 guys I got, Drake May suffered a concussion. He's in the protocol, and Tyrone Tracy obviously suffered a concussion as well. We obviously Steeler Nation. This is a Steeler show. We were watching that game. We saw what happened late in the fourth quarter. Both are in the protocol, non-linear injuries. You just got to follow along and see if they'll be out there on Sunday.
Cool, man. So let's get into the chat real quick. We got Zach on 2 different phones. So we bring the boom, as you know, and we bring the boom to you. So my guy's getting done. Nino back in the chat. What's going on, my dude? You got any more questions for us this week? Please let us know. So, yeah, Drew, let's talk a little bit about some of the headlines for this week. So the big one that's come out last couple of days, Anthony Richardson, supposed to be the fantasy darling, was supposed to break fantasy football this year, benched week 9. Hate to see it from a developmental standpoint. Very raw prospect. Drew has since left the scene, but there he is. He's back. Excellent. Great.
My cat was up.
No, you're fine. With Anthony Richardson taking the seat, I don't envision a scenario where he comes back barring like a Joe Flacco injury. But what do you think this means for the Indianapolis offense? To me, all of those accessory pieces, Downs, Pittman, everyone pretty much seeing a bump up. Would you agree with that? Do you feel differently? I would even think Taylor too.
Yeah, definitely. I'll probably talk about this more so later on. Obviously, spoiler alert, my only fantasy, but obviously it's gonna be an uptick. It was tough just watching Anthony Richardson. I mean, we all had high expectations for him coming into the season. Like most people had him as a top 5 quarterback coming in. It was crazy because people were ranking him above Jalen Hurts and Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson, and people are like, "Why would you rank a guy we haven't seen it from over guys we have seen it from?" And like, I mean, fantasy football is supposed to be fun. Like you want to draft the guys that you want to ride with.
Yeah.
But it turns out it was a stupid decision.
Well, you know what, too? Thinking back to like the draft season when we started doing the mock draft shows, you could get Richardson 7th round, maybe the 6th. I draft like the end of draft season when you got closer to Labor Day, like he was like a 4th round quarterback, and it was like, yes, I get that he was having like unprecedented fantasy football points per touch and like all of these different things, but it was like, all right, like what do we got in this guy? It's unfortunate because he does have all those physical tools. I hope that from like a career perspective for him, he's able to figure it out. But it is surprising. I don't think I would have given him up on him so early, but I also don't think I would have thrown him to the wolves. But it's kind of the nature of the NFL right now. He's the 4th overall pick. They want to get him out there ASAP. And I mean, when he's on, he's on. It just hasn't been consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's gonna get back in. I think he's gonna get back in the game at some point because I mean he's only played 7 career NFL games. I think what's gonna happen is they're gonna try to see if they can hang around with Flacco. I still don't think that they're a good enough team to make a playoffs. Like they play the Vikings this week. Odds are they're probably gonna lose that matchup. Once they're out of it, they're gonna bring him back in. It's just a matter of he just really needs to take a step back and learn a little bit from Flacco because the dude just wasn't cutting it. He hasn't had over 50% of his completions in a game all year. He's only averaging 160 passing yards a game and only 5 TDs like that he's accounted for in terms of passing and rushing.
Right.
In the season, he had 7 picks. Like the dude he needed to take a step back. They had to, put Flacco in just to kind of bring the vibes back up. And the fact that he pulled himself off the field.
I think that's honestly what sealed the deal.
Exactly. Like, dude, like you don't need to scramble every play. If you're gassed, the next couple plays will run plays anyways to Jonathan Taylor. Like, just say you're gassed, they're gonna run the ball and like you can catch wind, but like just pulling yourself off, that was like a give up move. And like they're not gonna put a guy on the field that they can't just be like he's putting all of his blood, sweat, and tears onto the field and just
that's not the kind of behavior that you would want from like the captain of your team for sure.
Exactly. It's just it wasn't,
Yeah. So another big news update this week: Deontay Johnson traded to the Baltimore Ravens pretty much for nothing. I think the separation of picks right now, if the league season were to end today, between Carolina and Baltimore is like 9 picks. But
yeah, I think it was 15 because I just read it like an hour ago.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. I'm surprised that Deontay went for as little as he did, but do you think that this is going to have like any uptick for his fantasy season? I feel like from my perspective, we talked about this because we were in the middle of a dynasty trade. To me, it crushes Deontay just because of the lack of pass volume. And then you got Chad in the chat. What's up to my guy, Chad, talking about like, all right, like what does this mean for other players like Justice Hill? They even mentioned something about Deontay potentially doing punt returns for them, which I thought was very interesting. But he hasn't returned a punt since 2020.
Yeah, but he's still really good at it. I'm not really worried about that. The dude's gonna eat in fishbowl, I think now. But his fantasy value is it's destroyed. They're a run first team. He's gonna have weeks where I feel like he's gonna put him up, but you're just not gonna know when that is. And it's just gonna suck.
I feel like after Bateman dropped that pass right off of his face last week, they're like, all right, we're getting another receiver. This is stupid.
I think that it was in play the whole time because like even if he excuse me, even if he doesn't suit up and give him anything, they're gonna get a comp pick that's gonna be more valuable than the pick that they gave. Like it's just a no-brainer move. Like I'm surprised more teams weren't going for him just from that perspective. Like they're probably gonna get I guess playing time's gonna come into play on what you're gonna get for him, but like realistically, I think that he could be a 3rd round comp pick because of who he is. Like he's a solid player. He's definitely getting more than a 5th for a comp pick.
Yeah,
So
it'll be
like,
interesting to see what his next contract looks like for sure, because he's a free agent at the end of the season. He's what, 28? So still have a couple of good years that you
he's
can
right in
squeeze
his
out
prime.
of him. But yeah, so be
It's
interesting to see.
Yeah, I think it's just more so there's so many receivers out there that it's like,
Well, and you can draft one that can show up week one and be just as good and on a cheaper contract than somebody that you're going to get.
yeah,
I mean, everybody thought the Christian Kirk deal was crazy, and now like that's just like an average wide receiver contract. People were willing to trade for it, like it's nuts. But yeah, we'll see. I don't think that it impacts Zay Flowers. I think that like whatever Mark Andrews is doing right now, who knows what happens with that.
they're
Bateman,
all just they're all just going to eat into each other. It's just
yeah,
Lamar's going to continue to be good. Derrick Henry's going to continue to be good, but he's very identical of a player as Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews isn't getting enough targets. Like he has to score.
right.
So it's just there's not enough ball around for all those receivers.
Yeah.
I don't think Bateman's going away either. Like that ball that he dropped, he clearly was just like the sun was right in my face. And you could see it. Like Lamar rolls into the shade and then throws it back into the sun. Like
Yeah.
it was just he had no shot at that. Like they're all just gonna be like Zay Flowers still leading the way, but like how many targets do you think he gets? Like 6 or 7 now? Like if he's lucky, he's not gonna be getting the double-digit targets, I don't think anymore, because they're similar players. They're both gonna be open a ton.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it eats into Zay that much personally.
I we'll see. I do think that it does. Just because of they're similar players and they're both going to be open, so it's whoever Lamar's looking at first. It should
I
be
just
Zay.
think it'll be Zay just because of the connection that they already have, and like Deontay coming in mid-season. Like by the time they get up to speed on that, we'll see. All right, so we got 3P1C fail here. Welcome to the show. So Drew, would you rather have Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston ROS in Superflex?
Yeah, so I took Jameis Winston as my only fantasy last week, and I fully anticipated it being a 1-week thing. Like his schedule's brutal. Like I don't trust Jameis long term. I still think he's going to put up some numbers because of his like free vibe mentality on the field. Just he's chucking it up there, but his matchups are going to be tougher than what Joe Flacco is going to provide. And I think that the Colts have a worse defense to the Browns. I'd have to look at the numbers because I haven't really been prepared for that, really paying too much attention to the Colts. But I don't think their defense has been doing too hot. So I think they're going to be more shootouts than the Browns will be.
Yeah, I also like the weapons more for Indianapolis. If you look at, say, I'm trying to find Jameis's rushing stats. Like he's peaked, like in the last, his most that he's had in a season is 60 attempts almost. He's a 59 in 2019. So he's not really a runner. So to me, it's kind of just like, all right, who do you like better? Joe Flacco, I think, is the better player. He's got the better weapons and the better offense. As far as the better defense, I'm not sure, but I don't think that like Tillman, Moore, Jerry Jeudy is even comparable to Pittman, Downs.
Yeah, that's fair and definitely true. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm assuming this was related to Deontay. Jerry going to give him that Brandon Cooks money? Possibly, could see it. He's probably just going to be trying to trade up for Genty. Is that how you say it?
Ashton Gianti, I think.
Yeah,
I don't actually know how to say it yet.
You know Jerry's going to be salivating for that. Maybe that's what he's doing. He's tanking for him.
The dude is sick. Like it blows me away when I go in to bet his touchdown prop and it's minus 3,000 to score.
Yeah. And then it's like not that much better for 2.
It's like plus 120 to get 3.
It must be nice. All right, Drew, do you want to talk tight end day for fantasy this past week, or do you want to move on to Tinder?
Yeah, we can talk tight ends. I mean, we're not getting a whole lot of questions yet. It was a good tight end national tight end day. I mean, we had 5 tight ends score 20 plus. I don't think we've had 5 tight ends score 20 plus all season until this week. I'd be shocked. Like it was amazing. We had 15 tight ends that scored touchdowns. The main thing for me is Kadon was unlocked. I need to straight up apologize last week to someone because they were like Kadon this week, and I just fully believed that the Bucs were going to be more run heavy than they were. Kind of surprised by that, but Kadon The dude is a set and forget it tight end 1 until Mike Evans returns.
Yeah, he was all over the field. It was very interesting to see. I thought too, with the way that they had kind of like this running back committee thing, it was like, all right, you can do all of this all the time because you don't have to worry about people getting winded. But yeah, Baker did better than I thought he was going to do with the weapons that he had. So that's very promising, like from a long-term perspective for Tampa. Like, hey, we think this is our guy. Like he's elevating these players. It's good to see. It'll be curious to see how things stack up in that room, at least right now, where it's like everybody's like, okay, McMillan's going to be the new slot guy. He's going to do this. Didn't really happen. That was Sterling Shepard, really. So
Yep.
I'm very curious to see over time how that offense shakes up. Mike Evans is obviously going to be the number 1 dude, but I don't know. I feel like there's going to be another fantasy relevant player out of that mix, and it could be Shepard if he's going to continue to get that Chris Godwin role.
He didn't really get much, though.
Yeah, he didn't get much in the stat line, but he was in the slot 60% of the snaps.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that maybe Kate Otten is just the guy that's going to be there.
Yeah, I think he definitely becomes that number 2 target for sure. So it could be.
I just really thought they'd be more run heavy than they were. I mean, they did get down pretty big to Atlanta early. It was a high scoring game. We'll see if it changes based on what their game script looks like. But I was shocked that they didn't run the ball more.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see. But yeah, it was definitely a banner day for the tight ends. I mean, even Kyle Pitts didn't really play a whole lot in the second half, had 2 touchdowns, tight end 1. It was just a big week all around for everybody, except for friend of the show, Pat Freiermuth, who, happy belated birthday, got no love in the passing game last week.
Pat might be droppable because Calvin Austin is emerging. I don't think people realize that he's emerging as his second target. Right.
Yeah, well, he's been open a lot the first 5 or 6 games, but Fields wasn't finding him, and Russ is definitely putting it on him. So there's definitely a good opportunity there. He's actually sitting on our free agent list in Fishbowl. I might pick him up after we get off.
Yeah, he got dropped in my Fishbowl too.
He's been my ad drop guy like all the time, like because I dropped him for Tillman last week before.
I had so many injuries that I've just been dropping those guys. So.
Yeah,
I'm still hovering around 900 though. Somehow,
There you go. Yeah, we're getting close. I can clinch playoffs for this week, so
I cannot
handle business.
I got smoked last week. It was brutal.
Yeah, sweet. All right, so we got a couple more questions from Chad. Then we can jump into fantasy football Tinder. So over under 2.5 fantasy points. Tank Dell versus Sauce with no Nico, no Diggs. I feel like that's an easy over, unless FP means something different. But
yeah, I mean. Even though Sauce is going to be covering him, I still think Tank's going to get enough.
And Sauce doesn't shadow.
I thought he was shadowing some weeks, but it depends on what they got going back there because there's been some brutal injuries.
Yeah.
Like I felt like Sauce did shadow George.
Maybe. I don't think that they do. Because who's their number 2? It's
DJ Reed.
Yeah. Well, so they've been playing Reed. Yeah. So I don't think when Reed is healthy, I know he was banged up a little bit.
Yeah, he missed. I thought that Sauce shadowed George that night. And then if Reed comes back, they don't need to shadow because he's
right.
His own right.
Yeah.
But I don't think that Reed's back. I think that he's missed the last 2 games.
Yeah.
So it depends on if he plays.
I didn't see an injury designation on him this week, so we'll see. But
I don't think that Sauce would follow Tank into the slot, though. So
no, I think Xavier Hutchinson will still be the X. Robert Woods or Mechie probably becomes the other outside guy, and then they'll probably have Tank in the slot.
Yeah.
So we're a week late on National Tight End Day, but with the injury to Diggs, do you think that Schultz is a big buy? He actually played less snaps last week, but was second on the team in targets.
I haven't really been impressed with him.
No,
I feel like
me neither. Yeah, I don't see it. To New York as a matchup overall, not really fantastic. Looking at the last few weeks for them, the one area that they do struggle a little bit is against tight ends, so it might be like a good streaming matchup from like a DFS perspective. But I think that there's other options that I would rather roll with.
The Texans have been very run heavy because Joe Mixon looks like he's having a resurgence. Like
Joe Mixon's looking like Joe Mixon from like 5 years ago.
I think he looks better than he's ever looked.
Yeah.
The Bengals, honestly. So like that's why CJ Stroud hasn't been very good. Outside of Nico, I really wasn't that impressed with what Stephon Diggs was providing. It was just mediocre fantasy production. I think that they're very much Joe Mixon centric. So I don't know.
We'll see. We haven't heard anything on the Lamar did not practice today. No.
Probably just had the shits again or something.
Hey man, it happens. As somebody gallbladder survivor, it's tough in these streets, bro.
It's Lamar has this every year. Like he just gets sick out of nowhere.
Maybe he just likes Halloween candy a little too much. Well, we'll consider it as a veteran rest /
I had no idea, so I don't think there's anything.
Back and knee.
Well, the back is just him pushing too hard. Like
that's crazy, bro. Let's never talk about that again. All right, so let's get ourselves into the right size here, and then we are going to do a little bit of fantasy football Tinder. So how this works, if you haven't been on the show before, is that every week we are going to talk about a couple of hot issues in the fantasy industry and give our feedback on whether we are buying or swiping right, or if we are selling on that issue or swiping left. So let's talk a little bit about our friend Zach. So Zach was at the game last week, and Zach actually had a really good performance, which has kind of been the case for him lately. Good home stretch for him. Some people are saying that he may be the new Pittsburgh Pigeons. So if you're not aware, Steelers, when they have the Pigeons show up in the field, doing really good. We had Zach on the field, their boy DB, big result. Can it carry forward? Everybody who's superstitious, they're going to say, yes, we need it. Get him on the field every week, giving them press passes. For those of us who may be only a little stitious, they're going to say no. You'll see that with the red X's on the screen. Now, Drew, for our first guy, we're looking at someone who's taken a really big step in their offense as a result of trade injuries. We're talking about none other than Cedrick Tillman. So he led the Browns for receiving in a second week in a row. He was the clear starter and still rotating in and out, but his snap percentage really high last week. Had a big game, 2 touchdowns. Can Cedrick continue to be cool? Which, Drew, you may not know this, but Be Cool, very big Cedric the Entertainer movie. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, it's a good thing you clarified that. I thought that this was an easy yes. It's really funny. I was thinking about this. Like the Browns, like they do so much as an organization that like no one agrees with, honestly. But this is another thing where I'm just like, how did they not know that he was this good? Like Cedrick Tillman coming out of Tennessee was a very good player. Like I think he went in the 3rd round, but like we valued him much higher than a 3rd rounder. The reason why he went where he was is because he suffered a significant high ankle sprain in college that required surgery. Like the dude was hurt, and that's the reason why he went where he went, and he still went in the 3rd round. Like the dude was talented. Like he was one of my top wide receivers. I know Zach was crazy about him. Zach held him through all of our dynasty leagues. We didn't even consider dropping him. He was stepping foot on the field. Like, what are they doing going out to get guys like Jerry Jeudy when Cedrick Tillman definitely should have been warranting playing time? I never get that with them. But the dude absolutely could be a league winner, honestly. Like, imagine if he went off on some like Josh Gordon like level performance the rest of the season, because like I kind of see that. I mean, he had a 24% target share last week. He has 21 total targets in the last 2 games.
Yep.
82% and 89% snap share. He's running routes on 82% of his snaps. Like the dude's really talented. He's finally getting an opportunity. I think that this is a slam dunk, like kind of like a godsend type of thing that if you got him on waivers this go around, at this point in the season, like this is huge for fantasy football for this season. And I honestly like this is the slam dunk smash buy. He could be a league winner.
Who was the dude that played for the Eagles that randomly blew up for like 7 weeks a couple years ago? Yeah. I don't think that it's like a Travis Fulgham thing where you have this random guy that steps up to injuries, and then all of a sudden, like you said, like the pedigree was there. I think he would have been a higher draft pick if he didn't get hurt.
Probably a 2nd rounder if he doesn't.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It is puzzling that, especially for a team that gave up so much in order to acquire Deshaun Watson, to waste additional capital trading for these other players when you have someone like that sitting there. Like, I mean, if you look like Jerry Jeudy, like becoming a little bit obsolete, I think Elijah Moore is better than Jerry Jeudy, but I think Cedrick can be better than all three of them.
I think he's the best wide receiver they have in that room. And
yeah, for sure. I thought
receiver when Amari Cooper was there, just he didn't have his opportunity.
I wouldn't go that far. I think Amari Cooper's still an elite route runner, but I will say that I thought that Njoku was going to be the primary beneficiary of the departure of Cooper. It's turning out that it is going to be Cedrick Tillman, and I'm all on board for it. I feel really good. He's not a set it and a forget it, especially like you have the Chargers this week. You got the bye the week after. His schedule, honestly, pretty brutal looking at like the days ahead. New Orleans is a good plus matchup. I would honestly look at selling him after the New Orleans game. Then you got Pittsburgh, Denver, Pittsburgh, Kansas City.
Yeah,
That's just a nasty stretch.
I'm not worried about him against the Steelers because the Steelers are going to let these guys get their receptions.
Get the yards. They're very much bend not break.
Yeah. So like, I'm not really worried about him against the Steelers, but against the Broncos, you're not starting him. Against the Chiefs, you're not starting him. I think you could start him this week if you needed to, but in a deeper league.
Yeah. The Chargers, they're just top defense in the league. So I'm just like,
It's just like, I feel like he's hot kind of thing. So it's like, I don't think there's a reason to take him out of your lineup until he has a dud. Kind of thing. So like, I will start him in some leagues depending on what my matchups look like, because I do have a lot of Pickens this year, which they have the bye. I mean, I had crazy injuries in fishbowl, so he's a set it and forget it in my fishbowl, no matter who they play. I just don't have I don't have any other options. I was able to get Calvin Austin off waivers, though. I was pretty happy about that, considering.
There you go.
I mean, Khalif Raymond was available. He went for $93 or something in my fishbowl.
Wow. Somebody was just ready to make it Raymond.
Yeah. Someone who won't make the playoffs either, so he's just going to rot. But
well, the funny thing is it's like, yeah, he gets the punts, but like punt returns, like I don't feel as good about those because one, depending on like how the defense is, which I'll give Detroit credit, their defense has been really solid even without Hutchinson. But I mean, you're not house calling it every week, and a lot of times, even if you do get the punts, these punters are so good now that how many are actually resulting in returns? Not a ton.
The other thing I wanted to add to on Cedrick that I should have said earlier, and this kind of makes me explain why I don't feel too bad about matchups with him. The Browns have trailed on the 5th highest percentage of their snaps, like snaps in general. Like they have been losing most of the season. So like I think that there's going to be a lot of garbage time opportunity with Cedrick Tillman. So if the dude gets 12 targets and he catches 6 or 7 of them, he's going to pay off. And that's what we're looking at right now.
I like it. All right, so let's move on to Tinder 2. So last week, 66% of the fantasy community overthought it, Drew. They overthought it. Couldn't be us.
Yeah, there was no way I was saying Puka.
Couldn't be us.
I had the victory lap so much, and even if he didn't play well, like I wouldn't have regretted it in the slightest. Like I drafted this dude in the 2nd round. I got nothing out of him all year. He's going in my lineup. Like don't even think twice.
This ain't a Puka talk. This is about one Matthew Stafford. His boy, Clayton Kershaw, about to get himself a World Series ring. Staff got his boys back. So my question for you, Drew, are the Rams back to being overstaffinated?
I feel like the last 2 weeks, people are going to assume what we're going to say with this guy in terms of fantasy football, but like I'm not going to say it.
Last week?
We talked golf. The week before that, I don't remember who it was. Whatever, but
it was Mahomes and Goff.
Yeah. Well, I just mean the last couple of weeks we've had guys on Tinders that don't run, so it's kind of like you're not going to buy players that don't offer any rushing upside in fantasy, but I'm buying Matthew Stafford, and I don't care about the lack of rushing with him. It's Puka and Cooper Kupp are so good. The Rams defense is suspect. They're going to be in a lot of shootouts.
Yeah.
Their schedule is beautiful the rest of the way. 7 of their last 10 games are against bottom 12 defenses. And the other 3, they play Philadelphia, Miami, and Buffalo. Philadelphia's secondary isn't crazy good.
They're very young.
Yeah, they're middle of the pack. Miami is middle of the pack as well. Buffalo has been lights out.
And I think Miami has also been virtue to like very fortunate matchups.
Right.
So if you look, we talked about that last week with Kyler Murray. It was like, if you look at like our chart, Miami's like bottom of the barrel, right. But it was like, all right, but who are they playing?
Right, exactly. So the schedule is very good. And even if those three matchups, say Buffalo is elite, Miami is elite because they're kind of suspect. We don't know what they are. All three of those matchups are at home in the Dome where the vibes are good. I think that he's a top 12 quarterback the rest of the way. I think he has top 10 upside. He was QB5 last week. We already saw. I mean, he's not going to throw for 4 touchdowns every week.
Right.
But the vibes that this team has now that they're back, they're not out of the playoff picture.
Frustrating. Cooper Kupp could have been ours.
Absolutely. It sucks really bad, but like it's good for fantasy football because Stafford is going to be relevant because they have a lot to play for. So they're going to ride his arm rest of season. Like I really believe that that's just how they're going to operate. There's going to be a lot of Kyron in the red zone. So you're going to need to get some longer scores and get in the third and goal to really capitalize because he needs to throw touchdown passes. But I think he's going to get enough passing yards. And I think that he's going to throw for enough touchdowns that he's going to be a top 12 quarterback rest away. So like I'm actually buying him even though he doesn't help for the rushing because in the 17 games that he's had with both of those guys, he's borderline top 12 even without the rushing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm with you, Drew. I'm also going to buy. If I look at who has been kind of like the top 6, and we talked a little bit about this last week. So Lamar is going to run, Hurts is going to run, Daniels is going to run, Allen is going to run, right? So other guys that you have that have been kind of like in the top 10, top 12 that don't run. Baker Mayfield, he just lost all of his weapons, right? He played good last week, but like he's a little bit worse off. Jordan Love, he's already banged up. Like that's going to be a struggle for him. Russ Wilson sitting there at number 7 points per game. Then you got Brock Purdy, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff. None of those guys, like, they don't worry me. Like, I feel good, like, knowing the matchups that Stafford has, I would be more than comfortable throwing him into the mix. Now, if one of those guys, if I have them, I wouldn't go out and trade for Matt Stafford. But if I can have Matt Stafford and one of those other guys, like in that bottom 6 through 10, and play the matchup game, I feel really good about my quarterback situation.
Absolutely. Agree.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where it's like you look like, okay, like who are guys that we're going to run? Like Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's not really running a ton, only 41 attempts this year. Even Josh Allen is only at 45 on the season. Bo Nix, maybe somebody to watch. He's at 52 on the year. But other than that, like the people behind him, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence has only ran the ball 20 times. We thought he was going to be much more prominent in the run game. Caleb Williams has only run the ball 35 times. Dak's not running the ball. Aaron Rodgers, obviously not going to be running the ball. Stroud not running the ball. Like, so I just don't see it. So to be in that prolific offense, it's funny, the coaches in the McVay tree, it's like they need all of those pieces. When they start to lose pieces, the offense just crumbles. They've got all the pieces back. Your boy Tyler Higbee's probably going to make a comeback here in a couple weeks. So, you know, that's going to be a big boost. Not actually, JK, but all for funds. But yeah, I feel really good about Matt Stafford moving forward. So good stuff. All right, man. Well, I see no questions in the chat, so we will
turn on Twitch.
Say what?
Did you isn't there something you have to do for Twitch stuff to pop up? Because like I feel like
no, it was on last week for the Twitch. I accidentally selected the Around the 412 Twitter account. But since it's not verified, then it didn't start. So then I just switched that over to Twitch. But yeah, it's all there. We're just we're quiet on the home front. People are feeling good about their teams. Let's ride with it. So
people are probably trick or treating.
Oh yeah, that's true. Trick or treating. I just found out yesterday that our trick or treat was on Saturday. So it was sad to miss that. But you know, it is what it is. Ohio for you. So, Drew, we're going to transition over to our only fantasy portion of the show. For those of you who have not seen Only Fantasy before, what we do each week, we pick one player and one player only who we think is going to have a great performance that we will be subscribing to. Before we can get into our picks for this week, we're going to talk about what happened on the previous occasion. So, Drew, let's take a look back at week 8. So we have a new emoji in the chat. Drew took Jameis Winston, 27 for 41, 334 yards, 3 TDs, 2 rushing attempts, 2 yards, QB 10.
He's QB 8.
He's QB 8? Was he?
Yeah. On ESPN, he's QB 8.
Let me see. I might have just looked at the wrong thing. It also could have been a typo. Yeah, on Fantasy Pros, he was QB 10, but I'll give you that one. J.K. Dobbins, in a technical malfunction, we did not put his stats up because I am a cotton-headed ninny muggins, but he was running back 14 on the week. So 17 attempts, 57 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 receptions on 7 targets for 11 yards, 16.8 fantasy points. I've gone cold, Drew. I've gone cold. I started the season hot, and you boys I got to get it together.
I took over. I've been hitting this is my 4th week in a row. I feel like I've had a top 10 finish.
Yeah. Dobbins wasn't bad. I would have been better about it if he would have been in the top 12.
Yeah. RB14 is still good.
Yeah, still solid. And so before we get into this week's questions, I do want to pop back. So 3P1C fail. So going back to that Jameis versus Flacco conversation a little bit before, would it be crazy to start Joe Flacco over Stroud given his matchup in weapons?
Why don't you pull up my OnlyFantasy since it's all together?
All right. Well, I'm going to pull this out of the way, Drew. And yeah, who you got for me? Who's your guy?
So my week 9 OnlyFantasy. And this, honestly, like when I first told you this is who I was picking, I was just like, is this even bold enough? But it's bold enough. He's only added in 50% of Yahoo leagues and ESPN leagues. Heading into
I also want to talk to you about where you find that at because I was looking for something yesterday and it was very hard to find that info.
I just click on the player and it'll tell you what their roster percentages are. It shows you their start percentage. He was ahead of waivers. He was only rostered in 50% of leagues.
That's shocking because I picked him up week 2 at the latest.
Yeah, the dude should have been on rosters for a long time.
Yeah, like, but who are we speaking about, Drew?
Josh Downs. I don't get.
I don't know why, but he's very lean in his picture.
Hold on.
Did we do this again? You're lying to me.
Is that not A.D. Mitchell? That is A.D. Mitchell.
Dude, they can't do this to me. Why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? This is so unfair. How do you Google Josh Downs ESPN and then they put up a picture of another guy?
Yeah, that is A.D. Mitchell.
That is A.D. Mitchell. You're so right. Well, so then you get a 2 for now, so we're even. It didn't help me with Dalton Schultz. But maybe A.D. Mitchell.
Do I have to bet A.D. Mitchell anytime touchdown now?
You might have to.
Yeah. Cade Stover, did he even get any, like, he might have had like 10 snaps. He had nothing.
I don't know if Cade Stover got like nachos when he left the building. Like he was so minimally involved.
Yeah. Anyways, Josh Downs. He was only owned in 50% of leagues. So I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm getting him on my OnlyFantasy. People are going to know about this. The 3 weeks that Joe Flacco played, week 4, he was wide receiver 8. Week 5, he was wide receiver 17. Week 6, he was wide receiver 14. He's averaging over 18 points per game in those 3 games. Like, okay, he was wide receiver 17 and 14. That's just other players just had ridiculous weeks. But if you're getting 18 points per game,
it's great.
Yeah, like
for a waiver guy, absolutely.
Slam dunk. He had at least a 25% target share in all 3 of those games. The thing for me, too, I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, okay, Michael Pittman's the one. Michael Pittman's not the one, in my opinion.
Michael Pittman's banged up. I don't even know how that dude's still alive. It was like, hey, he's going on IR. And then it was like, oh, by the way, he's not. He's playing. Haha.
Exactly. His back injury is significant. I don't know how he's playing.
Drugs.
Yeah. The dude has more than 40 yards only twice this season.
And they were probably Flacco games.
One was against the Steelers.
Yep.
The other one was just this random one when it wasn't Flacco. Probably week 1 when Richardson actually had a good game. It was his only good fantasy output. Anyways, He has a 30% target share on the season too. So it hasn't even really just been those 3 weeks, but like he's really elevated his production during those 3 weeks. But he's been getting targeted as the one. He's 28th in the league in targets, and the dude missed 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like the dude is the guy.
The dude is the guy.
Yeah, that Josh Downs, you are that guy, pal. My concern, honestly, when I was thinking about this was that will he get in the end zone? He's actually 12th in the league in red zone targets. So the opportunity is there. It's just that because of he's a smaller guy, it's not as easy for him to get into the end zone. That's where Pittman's been their main target. But the opportunity is there. So it's not like we're going to go into this thinking he's only going to be a PPR monster. Like the dude could get in the end zone. And then finally, it's the matchup. I've already taken it to the Vikings once this year, and I plan on doing it again. A few weeks ago, I took Garrett Wilson against the Vikings. The dude had 23 targets, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Like the Vikings, B-Flow has been good, but
He's good, but they definitely give up stuff in the air because they're so aggressive. And if you have a quarterback like Flacco that knows ball and is going to hit someone who's a safety valve, Josh Downs is consistently open and is going to be that guy.
Yes. Like that's why when I originally thought this, I was like, this is too easy of a pick, but like he wasn't owned in enough leagues to make it easy. Like the dude is he's their wide receiver one right now. He has a good matchup and he has someone that can actually get the ball to him now. So like Flacco should be in your lineup over CJ Stroud this week. Honestly, like they're very much going to be Joe Mixon heavy. He has to throw for a lot of touchdowns for you to start CJ Stroud and for it to pay off because he's not running. And I don't see that happening without Nico Collins, without Stephon Diggs. So it's slam dunk, easy play for me for Flacco over Stroud. It's not crazy. It's just name notoriety. That's the only thing that keeps you from thinking about, keeping Stroud in there.
Cool.
But yeah, Josh Downs, I feel like this is going to be another big week for him.
Yeah. Cool, man. All right. So I'm going to roll with you on the receiver train. I feel pretty confident that I have the right face. And I can't believe that I don't know this because I know what Josh Downs looks like. So I'm shocked when I did this yesterday that didn't connect. But, it is what it is. So the guy that I picked for this week's been a bit of an up and down year. I think they were expecting them to have a little bit more continuity with the offense now that he had a full season, like an off season with their new QB. But my guy this week is Chris Olave. If you look at the season-long stats, people are saying that Carolina is like a bad matchup for wide receivers. However, if we look at what they're doing in the last 3 weeks, they've been giving up 31.5 points against Denver, Washington, Atlanta. Now, that doesn't sound all that promising. If you look at Minnesota, they're giving up almost 50 points a game. So there's more room to be had there. But if we look at what they did last week, 14 targets, 8 receptions, 107 yards against the Chargers. You roll into the Carolina game. Kamara has been banged up. We know that. I think he still has a pretty big day, but that felt a little bit too obvious. I think now that you have Derek Carr back, they're going to be humming. They don't really have anybody else to throw to right now, so I'm expecting a really big day out of Olave. So I think that he's somebody that he's had a couple of good weeks. If you were wanting to trade him, I think after this week, really after the Atlanta games, probably a good time to do it. I think he'll have a good game against Atlanta too. But I think he's got this little stretch of games where he's really going to make a name for himself. You can offload him, and I'm excited to see what he can do this week.
I took Alvin Kamara 2+ TDs already. That was a bet I placed before you told me about Olave.
Yeah.
There's going to be plenty enough. Even if that hits, I still think Olave is going to get his.
Yeah, for sure. So I like it. Well, cool. Seeing that we have no more questions in the chat, Drew, let's tell people where they can find us. So if you are on anywhere on the interwebs, you will be able to find us on X at our personal handles right below our names on the screen. You can also find us at AT412FF Show on X for the channel, I guess, or channels account. So if you have any start questions, things that we didn't get a chance to talk about throughout the show today, please feel free to hit us up. Hit us on the personals, give us a call, send us a little Facebook note. Probably going to go to spam though, so we won't see it. If you're looking for other content for the Around the 412 or the Fantasy Football Show, you can find us at Around the 412 on YouTube and on Twitch. And as we mentioned every week on the show, Rocking Around the 412 Year 7 is well underway. So we've raised over $30,000 in the last 7 years for children in the Pittsburgh area, trying to provide a little bit better of a holiday season for them. So this year, my personal goal is to sponsor 30 kids with the Salvation Army wish tree that they do. So well underway with that. Shout out to Zach and Tyler for making that happen. And yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap things up for us today. So Drew, as always, when we try to close the show, getting some comments here. So it looks like Jennifer Sons, she was our Dynasty second place person last week. So Stafford or Mahomes for the week. Mahomes, obviously, juicy matchup, but
The best matchup.
what are you thinking here between the two guys?
I'd probably just stick with Mahomes considering the matchup. He did pay off last week against the Raiders. I'm trying to see. The Rams have the Seahawks. They're kind of an enigma defense. Like they kind of show up sometimes and they don't show up sometimes. They're playing in Seattle though. I feel like that's probably a good matchup for Stafford still. But I probably just stay with Mahomes because I expect the Bucs to put up points and he has the best matchup. So I think it'll be high scoring. I think the over under on that game is like 50.5 too. So like I heavily influence my ties based on what the line looks like. And
yeah. No, I like that too. They also, I'm expecting a big week for Travis Kelce. Tampa Bay's been pretty porous against the tight ends, 22.9 points per game allowed in PPR the last 3 weeks with Atlanta, Baltimore, New Orleans. So I think 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks for tight ends, pretty good matchup there. I think Kansas City will exploit that and should be a fun game to watch, even with the lack of weapons right now in the Tampa Bay receiving room. Moving on to Freezy Fantasy, would you trade McLaurin and Brian Robinson for Malik Neighbors? Kind of been struggling these last couple of weeks. He hasn't been doing as well as he had.
That's my fault. I said it like 3 weeks ago. I was like, I'm worried about him coming back from the concussion because he was riding this like a hot TD streak.
Yeah.
That's my fault. I probably don't make that trade though. I like Neighbors. I think it might be a little too much trading both of those guys because Brian Robinson's been very good. Terry McLaurin's also been very good. I think it just might be a little too much for me.
Let me try to think about this. So I'm looking at Alex, aka Peaked in High School's trade value chart. So every week he publishes kind of like where your players are ranked. It's really more designed for like a 1-to-1 because if you do a 2-for-1, you're gonna have to drop somebody. Just looking at the player values though in this sheet. So if I'm looking at Terry McLaurin's sitting at a 23, pretty steady state for him, kind of week over week. Brian Robinson at a 15. So let's do some math here. So you're looking at a 38. He has Malik Neighbors at a 55. I still am really high on Malik Neighbors. I think that, like Daniel Jones hasn't had like his best performances, but they're going to find ways to get him the ball in some way, shape, or form. I do like the diversification of getting rid of like 2 guys from the same team and kind of spreading that out. Ideally, if you can swap Brian Robinson out for like another similar tiered running back, I think I would rather do that. But if they're dead set on the move, then for me, I feel more than comfortable making this trade. I imagine that if you're trading McLaurin, then you probably have other good receivers available to you. And so then Neighbors becomes like a number 2 or like a flex play. So I'm fully on board with this trade.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't hate it. It's just that I feel like I'm giving away 2 starters. And I feel like McLaurin has, especially as of late, kind of been.
He's really been booming. Yeah. I would say too, like if these are 2 starters and then you're swapping this out, then you're probably right. I don't make this move. But I don't imagine week 9 that you're making this trade. If it's like I'm starting McLaurin, but Brian Robinson's just sitting there for me, then I'm good with it. I would trade McLaurin for Neighbors 1-for-1. If Robinson's on the bench, tier up, get your guy that you really like. So, but to your point, if you're starting both of those guys week to week, then I don't like it so much because Neighbors may not replace the value for both of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. All right. So 3P1C fail. Back at it again. PPR. Would you pick up who I'm assuming is Keon Coleman or Romeo Doubs?
I'm actually really happy that this question just popped up.
Coleman's kind of been on a tear lately last couple weeks.
That's why I wanted to bring it up. It was something that I had in my mind, but it never came around. I would pick up Keon Coleman, and we talked about this. He doesn't separate, but they're really actively trying to make him a thing.
I mean, you have to if you're going to spend a first round pick on him.
Yeah,
I thought honestly it was lights out when they traded for Cooper.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, Shakir, Coleman, Cooper, all decent. I think Cooper more so because he scored, but yeah, I don't know.
I think that Amari Cooper's still going to be learning the offense. He might come around later, but like for me, it really looks like Keon Coleman's a perfect fit for Josh Allen because I talked about when the Cooper trade happened about Josh Allen wanting to go deep, and Amari Cooper played into that so well. But like Keon Coleman actually does too, not because he can get open, but because he's so physical at the catch point and he's just very good in traffic. So like I actually like Keon Coleman more so over the last couple of weeks because I actually think he fits with them. Even though I didn't like we loved the opportunity when he was drafted, but like I just didn't like the player's skill set. But I think I was just dead wrong on the way I read that. Like Keon Coleman is a very good physical player. So he might not need to get open for Josh Allen.
Yeah, I could see him thriving in like that like big slot role that like Juju played when he had Antonio Brown, where it's like Antonio Brown's doing a lot, but then you just have like pre-injury Juju was like very physically gifted.
It also looks like Keon Coleman's taking a step that I didn't expect him to take.
No, me neither. So out of those two, I would take Coleman as well. I'm still not sold on him. I don't see it from the long term, but happy for the guy. I love him as a person. So it's cool to see him be successful. All right. So just a random kid. Hey guys, need some advice on this trade. They want Bucky Irving for Tucker Kraft. My team, Jordan Love, Devon Achane, Chase Brown, JJ, Metcalf, Njoku, Coleman. I don't see why you're trading for Tucker Kraft if you have Njoku. Yeah. I know he didn't have the biggest pop-off last week, but I do think that he's going to be a top 2 target. Tucker Kraft has had touchdowns, but there's so many options in Green Bay that I don't feel great about it. I think that you're probably giving up a little bit much, especially because the running back room you have right now, there's not a lot to it. I wouldn't be wasting capital trying to get another tight end. I would be looking to get another running back.
Yeah, I would have probably taken the trade before I saw the roster. And I agree with you that I like Tucker Kraft more than I like David Njoku, but I don't think that they're that big of a difference. So I think I'd rather just stay pat. But I think Tucker Kraft there's a lot of weapons in that offense, but I feel like he's the one that's stable.
Yeah.
Like Dobbs is getting run right now because he complained about not getting enough targets. So now Jaden Reed is suffering. But Dontavian Wicks is just this random dude that just gets targets from time to time, and there's no explanation. Eventually, it's going to revert back to Jaden Reed. But I think that Tucker Kraft's just going to be week to week. I think that he's a part of their offense. But David Njoku is a guaranteed part of their offense, so I don't think that there's any point in leveling up like you're saying.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a tier jump for me. So it's like to give up a position that is not a strength, I don't necessarily see it. So I would not make that trade. All right, so moving on to Sean Brewers. Welcome to the show. What running backs would you be comfortable trading Marv for? Right now, I flip between Marv and Reed in my flex and could use the running back. Hot take, I would be trading Jordan Reed out of those two. But that's just me. I think that Marv obviously has had some down points, but historically, rookies in the second half of the year tend to come on. He had a good week last week. I think that he builds off of that. So for me, personally, I would be looking at trading him. Guys that you may be able to swing for that. Some names that come to mind: Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery.
Brian Robinson.
Brian Robinson, I think that's too far of a tier down.
I think
at least that's how he's perceived.
Yeah, I think you and I value Brian Robinson very differently. I don't know. I like Brian Robinson quite a bit.
I would want Brian Robinson plus like something back if I was trading him for Marv. Like I wouldn't do it 1-for-1.
I wouldn't trade. I thought we were talking about Jaden Reed though.
Either way, I wouldn't trade
Marv.
I wouldn't trade either 1-for-1. But another name that you could consider, he's been hot pretty much since like week 3 of the season. DeAndre Swift, I think you could get him pretty easily. According to this chart, James Conner, if you're keeping Marv, you probably don't want to trade and have both of those players. James Cook, if you can get James Cook for one of those guys, that's a smash except for me. But I don't see why somebody that has James Cook would want to do that, just seeing the way that Buffalo's performed this year. He's already surpassed his career high in rushing touchdowns. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, James Cook is an RB1.
But if you can trade one of those guys for him, that's a smash move for me.
Yeah, I just don't know why anybody would do that.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, Drew, what do you think about this trade from Nino? So Charbonnet, Tank Dell for Deontay Johnson. I don't hate it. I think especially with the Stephon Diggs injury, Tank Dell, he hasn't really shown the flashes that he had last year, but I think the potential's there. I think the player quality is there. So I like this move a lot, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good luck there because obviously this move was probably made before
Before the Diggs injury, yeah.
Before Diggs got hurt. I mean, I love the move entirely because I think Deontay's cooked for this season. The only thing that was going well for him is that he had no one to compete with for targets. So I think that you got obviously Tank Dell is leaps and bounds better than Deontay, and then you got your handcuff too. So I love it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Any particular buy low running backs that you like right now? First one that comes to mind for me is Chuba Hubbard. I know there's a lot of talk about the Jonathan Brooks coming back. But until then, he's really all that offense has right now. So I think he's going to get a lot of run. Other than that, I don't know. Is Josh Jacobs really a buy low? I feel like he had a good game last week, but I don't know. Let's see what we got cooking from last week. Yeah, Josh Jacobs was RB3, so I don't necessarily see that. Kareem Hunt was pretty ineffective. He didn't have a touchdown, or he did have a touchdown last week that kind of saved his week. Maybe people are souring on him a little bit. Chase Brown didn't really do a ton. And then
Aaron Jones is kind of a buy low.
Could be. Yeah, he only had 11.5 points in full PPR, 19 carries, 58 yards, 2 catches.
Ramondre's probably a buy low, but I don't think that I'm vibing with him rest of the season, so I wouldn't really recommend that. Travis Etienne is probably a very good buy low.
Very good buy low. Ken Walker went 9 attempts for 12 yards last week, so there's some options. I don't think people are going to trade a lot of those more well-known names for anything, but could happen. All right, let's move on to our next trade. It's so funny how this happens. All right, I got offered Saquon and Olave for Brian Robinson, James Cook, Terry McLaurin. Thoughts?
What's MYY? Why am I missing?
They're mine. So you're getting Saquon Olave, you're putting up B-Rob, James Cook, Scary Terry. I don't think I like it. I think it's too much.
I agree because Chris Olave really hasn't lived up to the hype. Like your OnlyFantasy, if he hits, like that's a pretty big win for you because he really hasn't been.
He's only had 1 or 2 games where he's gotten the targets and gotten things done. To me, James Cook and Saquon, stat-wise this year, pretty equal. I think Brian Robinson.
I think I'd rather have James Cook over Saquon. So I think that you're not even getting the better player there.
I don't know about that. Saquon's RB1 on the year, I think, isn't he?
It's more so that I think James Cook is like.
Or no, he's 3. Henry 1, Kamara 2, Barkley 3.
I just think that James Cook is the nucleus of a good offense. And
yeah,
if you take away like 2 games, he's probably on a points per game basis, probably in the top 5 as well.
Points per game, we have James Cook at 10, Barkley at 3.
I'm just looking at that Baltimore game though and the Tennessee game. Like James Cook had 2 really bad matchups where he didn't perform. Yeah. If you take those 2 outliers out, I think that he's much higher.
Yeah, it's like a 3-point difference right now. I just don't think that so even if you say that they're equal, I don't think B-Rob and Terry is for Olave. I think that's too much.
Yeah, and if Saquon is, we say that Saquon's better, obviously because he's higher ranked. overall for scoring. Like the gap is not big enough for
the problem that I have with it is that the Olave like piece of this trade is entirely reliant on his draft capital going into the season as like a third round pick.
Exactly.
He's currently points per game wide receiver 45. So you shouldn't be giving Terry McLaurin, who's currently wide receiver 9, for wide receiver 45. Like, why would you do it? He's on a great offense. Like, that's a no for me.
And Terry's wide receiver 9 there. Where's Neighbors at now?
Neighbors is at 12.
Yeah. And I know that he missed a couple
His points per game. Neighbors is 6. And then McLaurin's 17.
The thing with Neighbors, though, and I said this a couple weeks ago, is that he was scoring touchdowns at an unsustainable rate. And now,
but they're not even targeting him nearly as much as they were before the concussion either.
Last night or 2 nights ago against the Steelers, he had to have double-digit targets.
Yeah, he was at 13. So his low target game is 7 on the year. That was week 1. Against Philly, he only had 8. 13 against the Steelers, 15 against Dallas, 12 against Cleveland. Like, to me, like, that's going to continue. And then he also has New Orleans, Baltimore, Atlanta in the fantasy playoffs, which is pretty sick. And then Dallas before that. So
right. But what you just said,
Malik Neighbors' schedule in the back half of this, let me just rattle these off for you. So he's got Washington this week. Then he's got Carolina, which we're not worried about. They've got the bye. Tampa's been extremely porous. Dallas has been porous. New Orleans has not been great against the pass. And then you got Baltimore, Atlanta. Like, that's insane.
His whole schedule's
insane.
Good. Yeah.
Let me give you an easier question. I get Brees and DJ Moore. I'm giving up Brian Robinson, Tank Dell, and Ladd McConkey. Do I do it?
You smash that thing into the earth.
Yeah.
That's crazy, that deal. You don't give up a single player that I would take over DJ Moore, and you're still getting Brees.
Not bad. Yeah, and he also has Neighbors and A.J. Brown already. And Nina was on it too before we even got to it in the chat. He was like, "Yeah, like, get in there."
That deal is insane. Like that type of deal, people are gonna like veto and complain about.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so would you rather pick up Christian Watson or Washington Parker, or Parker Washington?
I'd probably pick up Parker Washington. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I think Christian Watson's the 4th guy.
Which is weird because it was interesting, like going into the year, Christian Watson, it was like, well, when he's healthy, he's the number 1 guy. But that offense is completely different than I think what everybody thought it was going to be. Even as him not being like a primary guy, he's really fallen down the depth chart. So I'm with you.
Yeah. I don't think I would drop anything for either of them, though. Like if you have someone on your roster, they're probably more valuable than.
Maybe. I'm assuming this is like a 12-team, 14er, maybe.
Yeah.
But people with like bigger benches, I know like our auction league has like 7 or 8 bench spots. So it's just like you got some real mud on the waivers.
Yeah. Washington has more opportunity right now, though. So he's the guy I would pick up.
Cool. All right, Drew. Well, that was our last question that we had for the day. Any closing thoughts?
No, man. Happy Halloween. Enjoying my first one with Noah.
Wow. What is King Noah being for Halloween?
So we're still working through whether or not we can make it work. But if it doesn't work, he's going to be a pumpkin. Like we have a pumpkin like onesie that he can sit in. But
yeah.
We're trying to do the Miss Rachel, and he's going to be a gumdrop. That way we can sing Miss Rachel songs to him, and because he loves that. He loves that girl. So
yeah. I can't say I've ever watched Miss Rachel. I have a feeling that here in the next couple months probably will.
Yeah, just a heads up. At first she's very annoying, but like when you like understand why she talks the way she does, like there's a reason for it. Like it's for kids that struggle with speech. So like she'll like speak out of the side of her mouth. That way you like the kids can actually see the way her mouth is moving to like read the lips and like understand the sound. So it's like she's a very good teacher.
The more you know. And most importantly, Drew, what is your 101 Halloween candy?
You're going to do this to yourself again.
I'm going to do it.
The chat is just going to cook you so bad. It's very difficult for me to pick my 101.
Okay, give me 101, 102, 103.
My top 3, though, in no order, It literally just depends on how I feel for the day. Snickers, Reese's, and
Oh, that's
Kit
right.
Kat.
You do love big penis veined chocolate. That's right.
My God, Butterfingers, dude. Like
Butterfingers is legendary.
it's like a desert in your mouth. Like I just don't understand like what you're thinking. I like Butterfingers too, but like there's no way you could get me a bag full of Butterfingers and eat that whole thing. Like you're just gonna spit nothing.
Butterfingers, paydays.
Payday's my favorite candy overall. Like that's my favorite thing, but it's not really like something people give out on Halloween. But like if I go into a gas station, I'm getting a candy bar. That's my 101 candy.
Exceptionally underrated 100-gram bars.
I like them too, but like, my God, like, let me put this into perspective for you. Last year, I didn't have a chance to get to the store to buy the big bags of candy. And those bags that include all the bars that you just said were just left behind. No one wanted to get them. And I got them for like 75% off. They just sat there like they were going to throw them away, bro. Like, literally, the assortment of your candy was getting ready to get dumped in the trash.
Well, then you know what I'm doing on November 1st. This is going to be a great day.
Man.
Well, everybody, have a wonderful, safe Halloween. From myself, Joe Frick, from the one, the only, Dr. Drew Hannes. Y'all have a great week 9. Hit us up if you need anything, and kick some ass this week. We'll catch you next time.